It will produce an economy where the time you spend in a car, you'll be doing something else. You could be developing a program, you could be getting entertainment, you'll be surfing the net, you'll be doing whatever you want. And the battle in car companies already today is who is connected to the internet quicker and has more technology in the car to serve the passengers, and soon it'll be the driver as well. But in the United States alone, there's 2 million jobs that are connected with driving. There are insurance companies which make a lot of money off people like me. I think I pay $1,000 a year in my car insurance for collisions. And of course, with driverless cars, the number of car accidents will go down dramatically is the assumption here. The estimates are 95 to 98% of accidents will go away. Any accidents will simply be because of mechanical breakdown rather than human error. So you'll lose all sorts of jobs. Now, I asked my 6-year-old, when he was 5 years old, this last year, 5-year-old son, we're talking about driverless cars, and I said, what? And he said to me, what will happen to the tow truck operators? And I said, what do you think will happen? He said, well, they won't have jobs. He said, that's bad. And I said, what do you think should happen? And he said, the government should train them for a year, and then they're on their own, which I thought was a pretty cool answer. But the point is that there will be tremendous disruption. On the other hand, you take Uber. Uber has created, they hired 50,000 people last month in the United States alone. 50,000 new drivers alone. Phenomenal job creation. Of course, an Uber, why would you need an Uber driver with driverless cars? So there's an example of two competing disruptions. One creating a tremendous number of jobs, but the other one will fundamentally change Uber as well. In fact, Uber drivers are now starting to form unions, and they're starting to have their own issues, and whether it's good or bad. Every Uber driver I talked to actually loved it and was making money. So think about the implications of that. We're already facing implications in the car with all sorts of technologies which allow people to be tracked, allow kids to be tracked, allow everything else. So if you're always using a service which allows you to be tracked and it's driverless, what are the ramifications there? And then there are these issues which are like, how many angels are in the head of a pin? What do you do? What does the smart car, the computer making decisions about a collision? How do they decide between when there's an intentional car coming at them, trying to hit them, or someone throwing something at them, or they have to choose between a kid and a bicycle, or they have to make a decision where there is a choice involved. And those are issues which are way beyond my discussion today, but there's a lot of issues to resolve. There's issues about how they work, there's issues about spectrum, there's issues about privacy, and there's others. So that's the third way, is a driverless car. The fourth way that things will be delivered to you when you're, that I think is disruptive, and there's been a lot of discussion about, is the use of drones. Now, drones is a technology which has literally grown rapidly around the world. We hear a lot about it in terms of military usage, but it also has consumer usage. In the United States, it's really strange, which the United States has been the leader in aviation for over 100 years in terms of development of various types of different things in the air, and even the law net area has been actually the slowest in this area. There's only one commercial permitted usage of drones in the United States now, and that was permission was given in Alaska to look at a pipeline, remote pipelines. What's really strange is if you are a private individual, you can use drones in the United States as long as you're not violating airspace and arguably privacy. But what you can't do is, if you're a commercial entity, if you're a news gathering, if you have a telecommunications company, you want to check your telephone poles, even if you're, in a sense, a fire department and want to see how what's going on with the fire, it is illegal to do that in the United States today. And that's something we represent also the drone creators. That's kind of crazy in our view, and we're trying to fight that. So the issues of drones, I mean, the privacy issues are huge. The legal issues are big too. So when airplanes were first invented, the argument was that as a landowner, you own everything below the mineral rights and you own everything above. And there's actually a lawsuit that went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and it found that, I think the famous expression that the law is not an ass. We're not stupid. I mean, this is crazy. The law cannot stop progress and innovation, so it's very important you don't own everything up to the sky and the stars. The airspace is something you can enjoy. I mean, the question is how much. There's issues with, obviously, low-flying airplanes of sound and disruption, and there's privacy, and there's things like that. But the issue of drones is one, drones are coming quickly, they do a lot, and obviously they'll save a lot of lives, and they're really good, but the privacy issues are something that people are already talking about. The fifth area, which I haven't mentioned at all, that I think is a pretty disruptive technology that is going to upset some people, is the concept of 3D printing. This is where you'll be able to print almost anything in your home. People have already created cars. There's issues there over intellectual property. Who's going to own the rights in things? You know, if you can get spare parts for cars, if you can create cars, who's going to own the designs? How can you copy them? Obviously, the 3D printing is not that new. In fact, it's so old that the patents have many of the patents have expired, which is why it's become a consumer product. And it's been used for rapid prototyping. It never really developed as a consumer product because the patent owners really sold the big, very expensive ones to companies that said, hey, instead of taking 2 years to build a model, I could get it down to a few months. But now it's become a consumer product. You could buy a 3D printer for less than a couple $1,000s. And it's rapidly being sold, and the growth is going to be huge. And it's being used in some really interesting ways around the world. In the developing world, it's being used, for example, for artificial limbs, because an artificial limb is out of the cost range for many people around the world. But with a 3D printer, when you have a kid that's lost a hand or something like that, you can actually, as the hand grows, you can create a new one every year that's sized proportionally, and it's for under a couple $100s. 3D printers are also being used to create new businesses and new business opportunities. But the issue with 3D printing, I mean, there's issues there. You know, the first one, which like rushed through the U.S. Congress, was it's illegal to use a 3D printer to create a gun. And you know that it's like the internet and child pornography. I mean, there are certain things which almost no one's going to object to, even on philosophical grounds, because the consensus of public opinion is so huge that it doesn't go there. But then the question is, what happens next? With the internet, it was, what's the status of internet gambling? What's the status of freedom of expression? And then countries start building walls around the internet. I mean, we see what happened in China, where Google is basically illegal, and you get one view of the world. And every country has their own different view of what's okay and what's not okay on the internet. Europe, for example, just passed this interesting law, which I think most people seem to support. I think is personally, I have a problem with it. It's if facts about you are on the internet, you have the right to erase them as an individual, even if they're true, which has caused some really interesting break in hyperlinks and what facts are. It's like you have a right to rewrite history. So, bottom line of it is it when you're in the middle of a revolution, you don't understand it. Because your life goes on, everything seems the same. Today we're in a revolution. The revolution is one that is really mostly inspired by the internet, but it's in so many other areas where it's in personal health care, where you have companies like I was with one in Silicon Valley last week. They have sensor technology where they're actually like the Star Trek fans. You put it on your forehead and you can get like 5 baseline functions, not only temperature, but blood pressure and heartbeat and other things. And you could have, it goes to your smartphone and it sets a baseline for you and especially for unhealthy people. They also have a urine tester that does 15 different tests in urine with a piece of paper which you don't have to go to the doctor on. You can see the results. They're essentially either on or off, and you can get immediately sensing. There's other, I know there's local companies which are doing some interesting things in the area of testing. I forgot the name of the company, but it actually is a material. It could basically look at the molecules of almost anything and tell you what it is. Phenomenal changes are occurring in many, many different areas. It's difficult to predict what they will be, but they're going to disrupt the status quo. They're going to affect existing businesses. And that is something that we're always dealing with, frankly, and we're going to continue to deal with. I am not a very popular person in Washington, D.C., because my job in our organization, we have one of the largest lobbying groups in Washington, is really to lobby against existing interests and be the guys saying, we're the new guys, we're the status quo. Now, the technology industry, which I represent, in politics has really not been that good until recently. It's said, you know what, government, just leave us alone. We'll go do our thing. We don't even want to pay attention to you. Well, we discovered that we have to pay attention, increasingly. Because, for example, in the United States, when the revelations of Snowden came out, and it turned out that technology companies were being forced against their will to do things which affected the privacy of their customers, and they had to promise to keep it secret as well, it became a big issue because that affects how the rest of the world views technology companies and where they can do business. So, and then there's issues of immigration and getting the best and the brightest. Technology companies have not done well in public policy, generally because you're fighting against something which is, you're trying to change a law. You're not trying to keep a law. And it's always more difficult to change it and do something different. And that's been a real challenge. But as people like Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, and Microsoft and Eric Schmidt of Google and his team, now the technology community is starting to say, look, we are important, we're changing the world, you're not going to like some of the things we do, but my view is, what I used to say is that this industry is important because it's changing how everyone in the world gets education, information, entertainment. I've concluded actually in the last few months that that's not grand enough. When you look at the world's problems of pollution, energy, clean water, agriculture, healthcare, some of the biggest problems in the world are going to be solved by technology, in my view. And a lot of it stems from one thing, frankly, or two things: the internet, wireless, and smartphones. Smartphones, over 1 billion have been sold in the US. Smartphones work, most of them have various sensing devices, accelerometers, GPS, gyroscopes, and other things which detect things. They're now down to a tiny cost per unit. And very smart people, including the people in this country, put it together in very clever ways. And they're doing it with the Internet of Things, which I haven't talked about, and data analysis and things like that. Last week, with some semiconductor CEOs, I met and did a panel on contextual computing, which is a fancy way of talking about the Internet of Things and analysis of data. That's going to change the way we live as well as also. Of course, it'll raise the same privacy issues and some of the same what can we do issues. But the bottom line is the future is great. Those that are able, the countries and areas of the world that can grasp the fact that technology and innovation is good will be the winners. Those that ban technology, like the North Koreas of the world, will be the losers. And those that actually recognize that it's not the technology is bad, it's not the gun that is intrinsically bad, it's the use of the product which could be regulated, and the conduct which can be regulated, will be the ones that I think will do well. Now, rather than talk about that further, it would be much more interesting for everyone, I think, that if there are any more questions, I'd be so happy to take them. So, who is going to show? I see a question. Could you, I don't know if there's microphone distribution, but if you just yell. Test?
Yeah, no, I have here.
If you have a, could you hand a microphone?
Yeah, your hand up.
Sorry.